This episode is sponsored by How to Talk to Your Kids About Alcohol. This is the most important course I have ever offered. The conversation about alcohol can be deep and difficult, and it can be a hard one to have with your kids. But this course transforms how you talk to your kids, your parenting, your journey, and it can help you create a relationship with your kids that's built on trust and respect and authenticity. In just a few hours, you'll learn how to talk to your kids about alcohol and, most importantly, how to keep them talking. How to Talk to Your Kids About Alcohol teaches you the biggest mistakes to avoid when it comes to your children and drinking. How to create relationships that are based on mutual trust, mutual respect, and openness. And what I wish I would have known as a kid before my first drink. And so much more. Please don't wait. Go to talktoyourkidsaboutalalcohol.com to learn more and enroll. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and this is This Naked Mind podcast, and I'm here with Rachel. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. It's just great. So why don't you kind of start from the beginning in your relationship with alcohol and your story? Where did it all start for you?
Well, I feel like a lot of people, I started drinking in high school, I guess, to feel, a part of something, to feel accepted. I just perceived that that's what all the cool kids were doing, I guess. And so that's what I did. And my story takes a different turn in that I was drinking prior to a football game 1 week into my senior year and was caught essentially for drinking at this football game with a couple of other girls. And we were zero tolerance. So at that time and in that place, that meant that we were out for one calendar school year. So that was my senior year in high school. It was extremely hard. It was a very public challenge that I went through in that we appealed it and there was a lot of public support, but they upheld the decision. And so at that time, there was no online school. There was no alternative school. There was no real option for me other than to get a GED. And so that's what I did. And I didn't really deal with a lot of those things for a long, long time. So that's kind of why I'm here today speaking with you.
And was alcohol very prevalent like in your house growing up? Or, was this just kind of like a...
No, it was not. And that really plays into my story as well. Very thankful for the conservative upbringing that my parents gave to me. But growing up in a Southern Baptist home and growing up in a Southern Baptist setting, drinking was not a part of my life as a child. And it was not something that we did. I didn't know people that drank that were adults. And so it's a very forbidden thing growing up. And so when you mixed that with the shame and guilt that I experienced when I got in trouble with drinking, it was a lot of negative emotions surrounding alcohol. So as I grew up,
sorry. I just want to unpack the specific situation a little bit more. Had it been that you'd been sneaking around drinking a lot, or was this kind of a one-off situation, or how was?
Well, I was a good student. I was a well-behaved, teenager. I think my drinking in my teenage years was pretty stereotypical in that I just would, drink for fun on the weekends with people, and it's kind of wild, I guess, but it wasn't anything like. It wasn't like I had been in major trouble at all. Like I'd never been in trouble. I'd never been to the principal's office for anything.
So it's kind of like everybody was doing it. You just happened to get caught.
Yes. And this was right around the time of Columbine, where there was like a knee-jerk reaction to the school violence in 2000, where they said, okay, we're going to roll all this under one zero tolerance umbrella: violence, drugs, and alcohol. And so it didn't matter if it was your first offense or not, you were kicked out of school and you really didn't have any other choices. I couldn't really go to private schools. I couldn't go to other public schools. So I just got the GED and went on to college.
Okay, interesting. And what about the other girls? Same?
I don't really know exactly. I think we kind of all went on to do what we had to do to take those next steps. I still had a lot of high school credits I needed to take care of because I was so involved in some extracurricular things like the annual and choir and those things. So I was missing a lot of learning going into college, and I really struggled academically there. And I continued to drink through my college years and through my young married 20s. And I think it wasn't until I listened to the Byron Katie podcast that you did with her that it really clicked and that a lot of what I dealt with the shame and guilt perpetuated my negative drinking cycle.
So let's go sort of from college on. So when did you start to sort of question it?
Well, I always questioned my drinking because I was always the person that kind of kept drinking. Like, I never wanted the party to end. I never wanted people to leave. I never wanted to go home. Like, where other people would stop, I was the girl that was like, let's just keep going, and I always knew in the back of my mind that this wasn't healthy for me. Like, I never thought like what I'm doing is a good thing, but I never truly could grasp. I had no idea that it was possible to just stop drinking. As silly as that sounds, like I thought it was like AA, like, or you hit rock bottom, you went to AA or rehab, and that was kind of what you had to do if you really wanted to quit.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I felt as well. So when did that start to change?
Well, I kept, kind of questioning in the back of my mind, and my drinking habits became more, I don't know how to explain it, like a lot more negative and a lot more, it was just taking a lot of energy from me. And I was questioning, and I was praying through some different challenges that we had. We ran into some typical adulting kind of things. Like, I lost my grandparents, we went through some financial challenges, COVID, I'm in education. So there were some stressful things surrounding that. And one of the things that really scared me and really got my attention was not just how bad I was feeling from the drinking, but I knew I was just like one choice away from a rock bottom. Like, I was terrified that something bad was going to happen. And the blacking out was very concerning to me. I had never really blacked out, no matter how much I drank in my younger days. Like, when I grew into an older adult, the blacking out started, and it didn't really stop. And I know you've talked about this in some of your work, and I just, it was happening more often, and it really, really scared me. And that's one of the things that I think really got my attention and really started making me question.
And so what did you start doing once?
Well, I was praying, and physically, like, a lot of stress was happening in 2020 that was really affecting me physically and emotionally and mentally. And I was just so tired. And on Instagram, this advertisement popped up for a different book. And so I went to Amazon, like one does, and I looked for that book. But your book was one that had higher reviews and was more popular, and it had a lot more reviews, actually, and a lot more positive feedback. And I thought, well, I need to get this book, because this book is about controlling alcohol. This has got some great reviews, and so I'm going to control alcohol. And so I ordered that, and that was in the fall of 2020. And then in the introduction, it talks about, like, keep drinking and just be curious. And I was like, oh, I really like this book. And so I just kept drinking. And then a couple of months later, when, like I said, the physical toll was happening and the stress was just so much, and I was just so tired from going so hard on the weekends, that I got it back out. And once I got past like the first few chapters, I didn't really put it down. And I finished it just, in a day or two. But there were several parts of the book that really spoke to me. And I knew, like, I was a changed person, and I knew I had to make that decision, and that I could. Like, I felt empowered. It was a miracle. It was a true, like, modern day miracle.
I love that so much. That's so cool. It's interesting because when I first wrote the book in 2015, it was a really different culture around alcohol. I didn't really know it at the time, but there wasn't any alternatives to AA basically at all. And I remember people being so mad at me that I had named it Control Alcohol. Like, I would get these literal hate mail letters, and I'm just sitting there like, I wouldn't have picked up a book that said get sober. Like, that wasn't where my mind was. Like, I wouldn't have picked it up. So I'd rather have more people pick it up, and then at the end of the book, of course, I say the only way to control it is really not to put it in your mouth, because how your brain works, and like show the science behind why it's so hard to control if you're ingesting it. But I just remember people being so mad. And so I had so much second guessing of myself and just questioning, like, oh my gosh, am I like this terrible, like a
Yeah.
horrible person. I mean, I would literally get letters from people saying that I'm going to kill people and I'm like just the devil incarnate. And then I remember the first time we had a live gathering of people, and we invited people to Denver, and there was just like all these people who wanted to talk to me, and they were just like, I would have never picked up the book. And so I was like, okay, me neither. Like I would not have picked up a Get Sober book, right? Or a Stop Drinking book. I just wasn't psychologically there, even though that was what I needed.
No, it was brilliant. And the science behind it and what it does to your brain, that was when I thought I will never be able to drink. And now that I know what I know, and I was just a changed person. I can't explain it. Like I remember there's so many core memories. Like I remember walking, and like the next morning after I read that part, I remember not wanting to put it down. I got so excited that there were podcasts available. And I listened to them voraciously. Like I listened to these podcasts all the time. And then I got into the different books, the different literature that's out there, like Quit Like a Woman and all those. And I just felt so empowered. And there was one particular podcast with Mead Shirley that I listened to, Mead Shirley Holland. And I remember exactly where I was. I remember so many parts of it. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, there is somebody out there so similar to me. How can this be? Like, how can we be so much alike? And then at the end, when she talked about like that she was a Naked Mind coach, I thought, oh my gosh, like it just kept getting better for me, like after reading the book. And so I reached out to her. I think she had kind of recently started her coaching journey. So she was so excited and so encouraging. And she introduced me to so many truths that seem really silly that I couldn't really wrap my brain around. I mean, I remember sitting over there and her telling me, you can forgive yourself for what happened your senior year in high school. And I was like, what? You can do that? Like, I can actually like move past that. And then she introduced me to the Byron Katie work, and she just helped me so much. And you got to remember, like I had quit drinking, but I was still going through so much stress in this one particular place I was working in. And so she was so patient with me, because there were days like I was teaching in the middle of COVID that I was just beyond exhausted. And she was just so generous and so kind. And I'll never forget what she's done for me. And we keep in touch, of course, now. And she's just an amazing person.
I love Mead. She is absolutely incredible. She's just phenomenal. And so you said that it was that Byron Katie episode that helped you to really forgive yourself.
Yeah, I was listening. I hadn't listened to the podcast in a while. I had the alert that you had done one with her on my phone. I thought, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, that's huge. Like both these people in one episode. So I listened to it right away. And what she talked about and you guys were both discussing the shame and the guilt, and how, like, I always, whether it was subconsciously or consciously, like I always would kind of beat myself up, like, why did I not stop drinking after I got in so much trouble? Why did I keep drinking so heavily? And I think it wasn't until I really heard her articulate with you that even though we wouldn't think that makes us want to keep drinking, it does, that it kind of clicked. I had done some of the other work from her book, but like the shame and guilt stuff hadn't really stuck out to me until I listened to that podcast. And then that's what prompted me to reach out to you. And I'd kind of always wanted to like tell you how much the book meant to me. But I didn't want to jinx myself. I still like felt like I needed to get through all those firsts, which I had heard about through other podcasts and other groups. And a lot of them were hard, but it's like once you get through those first and you listen to other people's testimonies, it's so helpful and so empowering. And I'm so grateful to all the people that have shared their story for me. That's what, of course, I want to do to help others as well. But I heard people say like it only gets better, and I just didn't know whether or not to believe them. But it's so true. It really does. Like the more time that passes, the more grateful you become. And the further you get from those hangovers, the better you feel.
So true. It's so true. I love that. So what do you think was like the hardest first for you?
No, I was very blessed because we were still going through COVID. So I wasn't in a lot of social situations, but I will say the trips, like leading up to the vacations, I think is hard because you don't really, like, you you think you might want to drink when you get to the beach, because that's kind of what you do. Like when you're a drinker, you get to the beach and you pop up in your first drink. But quickly learned to appreciate and cherish my alcohol-free vacations, because it's like a true vacation and I don't need to rest when I come home because I'm already rested. Like, what a vacation supposed to be. But I think the trips were hard in some ways, and being with other people that are drinking on vacation, and you talk about this, and people that have been in this through this understand this. But when you're around other people that are drinking, and you kind of have to explain yourself, but then you also, I feel like I need to be careful because I don't want them to think that I'm judging them, because I am comfortable being around them. But then I can quickly get uncomfortable if someone's as drunk as I used to be, and I realize that's what I looked like. Like, but that's me. That's not them. Like, that's just me having those emotions. So I don't ever want anybody to feel like they can't drink around me or that I'm judging them, because I was right there, the drunkest one of all.
So I know, me too. I'm like, it's funny because recently, actually, I went to Vegas for something with work. We were doing some filming and stuff. And the crew was like all drinking, and they're like, "Oh, is this okay with you?" I'm like, "Of course, I'll buy you a drink. Like, it's no big deal. I have no problem with you drinking." And it's just hard for people to wrap their heads around sometimes.
Yes.
But what was the tools, or like what were some of your go-to things to make it through those vacations?
I started some hobbies. I started like paint by numbers. And so, like, I'd be fine during the day because I could actually go work out if I wanted to, or go do something with the kids, which was so awesome. I can't even explain, like, as a
Yeah, it's
mother.
so different. Your kids become like your favorite things instead of like this burden that you're trying to slog your way through.
Yes. And like not being able to drive to dinner after you've been on the beach all day, like that's not an issue anymore. And it's amazing. But at night, like if I just felt like I needed to be busy, I would do a paint by numbers. And then I'd always wanted to get into needle pointing. And it's something you can actually take with you. It's a lot more portable than paints. And so I got into needle pointing, and that kind of keeps me busy, and it's like a treat and it's relaxing. And so it kind of takes the place. Fridays, I would get on my Peloton afternoons, because like Fridays when I would come home, like that's when I would start drinking. And so I would try to do like a Peloton workout to relieve that stress. I would talk to friends. I would call somebody, but I was never really white knuckling. I had made a lot of rules for myself, but I'd never said, okay, I'm going to stop drinking forever. And it was like when I read your book, I knew like I can do this. I'm done drinking. And I was, and it's a miracle to me. And there's not one day that goes by that I'm not so thankful for it.
I love that. And I think that sort of gentle decision of, it makes it so much more authentic, where you're not trying to do anything for anybody else but yourself, really, which is really cool. I remember on vacations being on the beach, and for some reason, when I used to go on vacation, it was always like, as soon as it was like 11 a.m., or depending, maybe even earlier if we were at breakfast and having mimosas, but it was like, all right, how drunk can we get? How early, right?
Mhm.
And then we'd get really drunk sort of on the beach or whatever. And then I go back to the room and we take a nap. And I remember the feeling of getting up then for dinner, and always just feeling like dinner is just ruined. Like it was always just ruined because I felt like molasses in my veins, and the alcohol from 11 a.m. was just kind of like wearing off, and I would feel so miserable. And I'd try to have a few more drinks and it would just never be the same. And so I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to do that tomorrow. But then the next day it would be like, we're all drinking first thing in the morning again. And it was always like these two bouts of drinking, like the early afternoon or mid-morning, late morning drinking, and then the evening drinking. And I remember going through it over and over and always thinking, this is horrible, and then doing it again. And I never even questioned, like,
Yeah.
do I have a choice here? Like, it wasn't even in my awareness, right?
Yeah. The wishing my whole entire day away. I just think back to being like truly sick and hungover from drinking poison and laying around all day thinking, oh, if I can just get through this day, if this day can just be over, I'll feel better tomorrow. And it's like, life is too short. I do not miss that. I don't miss waking up in the middle of the night. I did not know that was a thing, that was like scientific. I just thought that was me. Isn't that hilarious? I was like, oh, time to go to the freezer. It's 3 a.m. and get my ice pack. I feel
Oh,
like
man.
crap. And then when I read that that's my body trying to repair itself, I had a whole new outlook on that. It's so crazy how much we don't know about alcohol. And I'm so encouraged by the new movement and how much there seems to be out there. And I don't know if it's just me sensitive to it because I'm so encouraged by it,
Oh,
or if it really is growing, but I feel like it's growing and it's a lot more prevalent living alcohol free than it was when I first began to read about it in late 2020.
oh yeah, it's like exponentially growing right now. Like even I read recently that even alcohol companies are starting to dedicate like 20 to 25% of their R&D budgets into
Oh,
developing
wow.
drinks. And like, yeah, it's literally just everywhere. And it's so cool how the whole paradigm is changing. I remember thinking, a long time ago, someone's like, well, what do you see that the world could be like? And I was like, by the time my kids are of drinking age, I would love for it to be just as normal for them to say no to a drink as say yes to a drink, that there would be no guilting them or no peer pressure, or like half the kids are saying yes, maybe half the kids are saying no, or maybe even we can do better than that. But at least, instead of 95 to 100%, because I, I literally think in those situations, especially for me in my early working days, there was nobody not drinking. And if there was ever anybody not drinking, you knew that that person was an alcoholic because they had told you and they were sober, and you had to be real careful. And I think that's why people like are worried about like, hey, can I drink around you? It's like, yeah, for sure. Like I have no, I feel about alcohol. We were just a few weeks ago on a vacation with my in-laws, and like we got this plate of fruit in the morning and it had papaya on it. And I just hate papaya. Like I think papaya, I love fruit. I love all the fruit, but papaya for me just smells like a porta potty. I don't know. I just cannot handle papaya. And so I was thinking about it, like it's so easy for me not to eat papaya. Like it takes no willpower to
Yeah.
not eat papaya. And that's how I feel about when people ask me, would it be okay if I was drinking? I was like, it would, if you were eating papaya in front of me, it would be totally fine because I would have no problem not eating it because I just don't like papaya, right? So fascinating.
It really is. And knowing that I am not the problem, that the addictive substance that is alcohol is the problem, was so
Yeah.
freeing for me. In reading about the industry was hugely enlightening. And I just can't articulate enough how many misconceptions I had based on what our culture is telling us, and how freeing it was to learn the truth about so many things.
It's so good. So how have things, been going socially?
I enjoy more time alone than I used to. That's for sure. I'm more comfortable just relaxing. I'm fine to be with my friends. My friends are all very supportive. My family is extremely supportive. I'm just a lot more productive. I will say that I've been able to accomplish things that I've wanted to do my whole life, because I have extra time. I don't have to plan around feeling like crap every weekend, every Saturday, and every Sunday. Um, and being able to be there for my kids are very busy at this stage in life.
How old are your kids?
They are in sixth and eighth grade. So
Cool.
they're very active in sports and in their hobbies. And I just love that I'm present for them. And I love that I came across your work when I did, and that God moved in my life like he did at that time, because I feel like was cutting it close. Like they were certainly at an age where I need to be the example that I want to be for them. And my daughter had shared with me that she did not like my drinking when she was younger, like many years ago. And that kind of started my wheels turning too. And I don't even know if she would remember. I mean, she was little, and you talked about this in your book too, like what our kids think about our drinking really, really hit me hard. That, I mean, I was underlining and highlighting, and that was a hard truth for me to reflect upon.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, talking to people and interviewing people about their parents drinking, as part of that research for that part of the book. And one interview in particular stood out where she said that even though her mom didn't drink a lot, there was the nights that, they'd go out to parties or something, and her mom would come home and she'd be so loving. And so like, but she's like, I felt so unstable. And I felt more unstable with her being overly, how we get like overly, you're the best.
Yeah.
Really affectionate. She's like, because it just didn't feel like her. It felt so uncertain, and it felt like my mom just wasn't there. And I was like, yeah. And if you go, and even just as a person, and you're around somebody and you watch them get drunk, you watch them, like their spirit kind of like, I don't know, like it just kind of goes somewhere else. There's something else happening. The real human part of them, the like highest self part, just kind of devolves a little bit. And so anyway, it was really important for me too, in my journey. So how, like, has there been anything that you've considered really difficult?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think when you're with someone that's still drinking, like if you're married to somebody that's still drinking, that part, it can be hard. And I think that you've written about that. And I think that that's something that you have to continually go back to, like, what's best for you, and the decision that you've made. And, I won't pretend like that's not been a hard part, but it's definitely something that, we just keep talking about, and keep working on. And I just try to be as open and kind as I can. Just like, you hear about like how kind Mead was to me. Like I try to go back to the things that she taught me too, and use those things as well.
Yeah. And I feel like one of the analogies that I sort of give for that, because, my husband drank for about 2 years after I stopped, and he doesn't drink now. It was very kind of, one day we just sort of looked back and we're like, wow, you haven't had a drink in a while. And it was interesting how that works, but he had to read the book because I was like, I'm about to publish this and I talk about
Yeah.
all sorts of things, so you better read this. And so he
Yeah.
actually did read it, but he didn't stop then. But I think it kind of like over time, like works on him. I also think I was a bit of the ringleader in our drinking. So he, if I wasn't out buying it, he would still go buy beer, but it was just at a little bit of a lesser amount than when I was kind of instigating. But in any event, I remember just thinking of it like, okay, like the number one thing that I can do, and I think he just gave me such a gift, because early on he said, this is your thing. This is not my thing. So do not expect me to change. And I think that like just that from the very beginning was so good for me, because it was like, okay, like if I have all of the pain that I had when it came to his drinking came from my expectation that it would be different. And I think it's very Byron Katie, right? Byron Katie is always talking about how much all of our pain really comes from our resistance of what is, our resistance to reality. Like one of her most popular books is called like Loving What Is. And if you're just accepting and non-resistant to what is real, you don't have pain. And the pain doesn't come actually from the other person's behavior. It comes a lot because you're resistant to what is actually happening and what is real. And so for him to tell me early on, like, I'm just going to drink, and for me to have no expectations, or to have to, not that I didn't have expectations, by the way, for me to have to mourn that and make peace with it. That's much more accurate to what it was, because it wasn't that I certainly wanted him to stop drinking. I certainly wanted him to be on board with me. I wanted all of that stuff, but he was so upfront about the fact that this is your thing. This is not my thing. You better not like try to change me, that I just kind of had to mourn that. Like, I just had to be like, okay. And then I likened it to, okay, I just have to do this. It's sort of like I'm hiking up a mountain, and instead of hiking up a mountain without a backpack on, I'm hiking up a mountain with a little bit of a backpack full of rocks. And it's going to be a little bit harder than if he wasn't doing it. But I know that me having to do it that way made me much stronger and much more certain, because I had to do it just for myself. Like there was no other reason. And so like in hindsight, I'm thankful for it, because it was just like, okay, like you get a lot more exercise if you're hiking with a backpack full of rocks, which makes you stronger, right? But certainly, I think the most the best thing we can do in that situation is just to put down our resistance, even though that's really hard. And I actually had a man that we meet with frequently. He said, one of the best things you can do for your marriage is to get a piece of paper and write out every single thing about how you wish they would be. Like all the things you wish they would do. Like you wish he would say nicer things to you. You wish he would, take out the garbage on time. You wish he would this, you wish he would that. You wish he would stop drinking. You wish this, you wish that. And like all the things. And then go and just like mourn and have a funeral for that person, because that person doesn't actually exist. And then look across the table. Once you've like purged that emotion, look across the table and start to find something that you appreciate about the person actually sitting right there. And that more than anything has like changed the dynamic of my marriage, because we spend so much time, not just with people's drinking, but with so many things.
Expectations.
Expectations, wanting somebody to be different than they are instead of, and it wasn't like that when we were dating, by the way. We didn't do that as much. I don't feel like, I don't know why when you get married, all of a sudden you think like, I'm going to change this person. In fact, we sometimes get married thinking, well, I don't like this and this, but I'll change them. So interesting. So yeah, have you, is that like helpful at all? Or do you think you've been navigating it all?
Yeah. I mean, the backpack analogy with the rocks is extremely just accurate, really, because you do like it's complicated and it's hard because your partner didn't read the book or flip the switch like you did, and that was your drinking buddy, and so they've lost their drinking buddy, and you've started a new chapter and they're not necessarily on the same page, and so there's just a lot to work through. And thank goodness we have such a strong marriage, and we certainly know that nothing's going to tear us apart, but it's just getting through these changes as we learn and grow together, and always going back to like what brought us together, and why we'll always be together, and letting go of some of those expectations and accepting it for what it is. It's just sometimes in the moment you're not always thinking those things. I'm not always as patient as I wish I was.
Yeah. And I think it is hard when you have a change in perspective. And I think one of the things that has been really important is just understanding that like most of, if somebody, because a lot of people will tell me that this is never my experience in my marriage specifically, but this is a lot of people's experience in their marriage where they feel pressure to drink again from their partner. And usually they're like, I don't understand it. He's like trying to sabotage me. Like, why would he be pressuring me? And I'm like, well, you have to understand that like in their worldview, they feel like they've lost something too, a way that you used to connect. And they're just afraid. They're just afraid that either you will kind of evolve past them, or you'll think that you'll judge them, or you'll think that you're too good for them. And so the more we can do to like reassure and, just like I would buy Brian drinks. I would, if I was out at the grocery store, I'd be like, do you want me to stop at the liquor store? And I know that seems kind of counterintuitive considering how I feel about alcohol, but I knew that like, the most important thing was like him feeling like not projecting anything onto him that I was doing, not passively judging or, those little side glances, because all that does is just ruin, or not ruin, but it can certainly erode the rapport between the two of you. Like it can erode the communication, and then suddenly you're not like a safe place because they feel like you're going to judge them. And I think that even makes them more resistant to ultimately changing. You can't do any of that with like, okay, I'm doing this so you'll change later. Like you really have to kind of let that go, I think. But I do think the best chance we have of somebody, finding their own way is when they feel really loved and accepted, and when the connection is really strong. Because when the connection is really strong, if they ever reach a point, I remember a good friend of mine, it was the same sort of thing where I wrote my book, and she was actually, it was funny because she was over at my house, and it was during the summer, our kids were playing and I was like working on some of the final things, and I had to put in all these footnotes for the book, like just match the study to the thing. And I had to format it in like, because I self-published initially. So I had to format it in like the APA formatting.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sat there with me for 3 hours and like ran these studies through this formatting software. So we'd get the right formatting in the back of the book. And she's telling me, she's like, I'm not going to read this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And she's like, because I don't want to stop drinking. And I think I will, like, and I was like, yeah, no problem. But like, I knew that. She goes, but I know it's here for me. So I know that if I ever feel like I'm overdoing it, I know it's here for me. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, I appreciate that. And I think that when we maintain a really good, strong relationship with the friend, the partner, then they know that they come to us when they start to question it. And, as we know now, alcohol over time, it only goes one direction. It doesn't get better. You don't drink less over time, right? And so it's not like the outcome for somebody who's drinking regularly is going to, in 5 years, it's pretty predictable. It's going to start to cause problems. Like, it's just how it is, right? So anyway, yeah. So what else has been interesting for you or eye-opening?
I think just the things that I've been able to pursue have been really powerful, because I feel like I learned so much and I was able to grow so much that you almost feel like unstoppable. Like, you think, I can go do anything now that I've done this, or things that, you kind of wished you had done before, but you hadn't, you're like, now's the time. Like, and so through the learning, I've been able to combine some of the things I learned through your work and with Mead, and through some SEL training for students, and some a yoga certification for them. Um, and I just think it's really cool that you can take these hard things that you go through and become stronger. And then if you're in a place where you can influence, you can hopefully, shine a light on that for them too. And so I'm just thankful to be in the field of education, so that hopefully I can help students with some of the things that they're going through. And I'm pursuing a graduate degree that I've always wanted to pursue. And so that's been extremely challenging, but in a good way. So I know all about APA format and I've enjoyed that work. And just being able to plan new adventures and know that we'll be able to go see some great things and get out into the world and not feel like crap. I just don't miss that. I do not miss feeling like crap. I can't even explain to you how thankful I am to be in a better place physically and mentally.
I love that. What are you getting your master's in?
Educational leadership. So I'll be looking at a lot of research with learning and with leading and curriculum, a lot of work with those things. So I love reading the studies, and the things that you included in your book were really powerful.
It's so cool. My mom and I were talking yesterday because she is working on something with one of the things she's involved with, where there's something called Peace Education University, and she's bringing that as a pilot to kind of the schools where I went to school when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And she's like, yeah, it's really cool. Like, there's a foundation, and then the foundation pays for the curriculum development, and then they pay for these workbooks, and then there's a series of videos, and then, there's a facilitator guide.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, how cool would that be to sort of create like this educational platform to where, you can, for any school that would want it, we would have this sort of like, and I don't know what age might make sense, maybe 8th grade, they do this for sex education, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how cool would it be to have a similar thing where all the kids get the workbooks, all the kids, like, there's the videos, there's a facilitator guide, and it's just like 4 weeks of, an hour of the curriculum. It just kind of like starts to put itself into schools. And anyway, I think that's really something that I'm going to think about and look at, because I just think that would be like, how amazing would that be to have this stuff? I mean, I wrote this book recently called Buzz to Buzzkill, which is the things I wish I would have known before my first drink. and it's for that age, but I'm like, what if we could put that into more of a curriculum? And I don't know what any of that looks like, but I was just thinking, how cool would that be?
I've been able to work with a nonprofit in our area that it's called Project Post. And what they do is they shine a light on internet safety in the hopes to prevent domestic minor sex trafficking. And so they've done just that. They've created this curriculum that teaches children how to be safe online and what happens when you're not safe online. And it's very, very powerful tool. So I'm very thankful for the work that they've done. And I love that I can combine too, like what I've learned through Mead. I'm a coach of teachers. And so I can take some of the strategies and some of the things that she's used and kind of like make them work for teachers in a weird way. I don't know. It's really cool how it all overlap. I'll be doing some coaching training coming up, and I'm just so excited about what I've learned and applying that to what I do every day.
I love that. That's just incredible. That's so cool. Well, Rachel, let me ask you the question that I kind of finished these up with, which is if you were going to go back in time, to Rachel, who was not only drinking, but just feeling so much guilt about something that a little girl did, really, we're little when we're teenagers, and just beating herself up, and you were going to tell her about what life is like now, what would you say?
I think I would say you don't have to hit rock bottom, to make a change. You don't have to wait for something bad to happen to forgive yourself and move on. That everybody makes mistakes, and then that it's not you, it's not you that's the problem. It's the alcohol that's addicting. It's an addicting substance, and just to give yourself grace. I think we could all use that, and forgiveness, and love and acceptance, and how important those things are.
I love that. That's so good. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I really appreciate it. It's so good to get to know.
It's been a surreal experience. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wouldn't it be great if our children never had to go through the pain and challenges that we faced in our own relationships with alcohol? That's my greatest wish for my own kids, and it's why I created the most important course that I've ever offered, How to Talk to Your Kids About Alcohol. Now, even if you've struggled with alcohol and you're not sure what to talk to your kids about it, or if you want to create a relationship with your children that's based on mutual respect, mutual trust, and open communication, if you know that this conversation might be one of the most important you'll have with your kids and it just can't wait any longer, then this course is for you. It includes lifetime access to 6 video modules, a bonus recorded Q&A session where I answer questions from parents live, just like you, an interactive workbook, and our private and exclusive How to Talk to Your Kids About Alcohol online community, where you can connect with others who are also navigating this important conversation. Visit talktoyourkidsaboutalcohol.com to learn more and enroll today. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.